Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on the future of online wills and bequests. My name is Claire Joyce. I'm the Content Director at F&P. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia, and I acknowledge their enduring connection to land, waters, and culture. I am on the beautiful land of the Gundungurra and Darug people, and I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. And I welcome any Indigenous or Torres Strait Islanders people we may have with us today. Okay, before we get started, just say hello in the chat box, put all your questions in the Q&A box, and we will answer the questions towards the end of the presentation. And you will get a copy of the slides and a link to the recording. So don't worry if you don't take notes, you'll get it all. There's a lot of fantastic stats. I've already seen the slides, and then they look great, and there'll be a lot of information for you to take in. So without further ado, let's get started. It's my great pleasure to have Adam and Lucy here gathered here. They're going to tell you a little bit about themselves when they get on screen. So let's start off with Adam. Welcome, Adam.
Thanks, Claire. We're really excited to be back doing another webinar. So thank you very much for having us. We received some great feedback last time we were here when we were talking about our Gifts and Wills report. And we hope you guys find this webinar just as interesting as that one. Today, we're going to be talking about the future of online wills and bequests. So for anyone who's wondering what on earth is around the corner, this webinar is for you. First up, we're going to cover some trends across will writing and gift pledging, both in Australia and internationally. Then we're going to look at the impact technology is having on the gifts and wills space. We're also going to talk about some of the key drivers of bequest revenue and explore how those are likely to evolve in the future. We're going to look at barriers to growing gifts and wills and the number of different recommendations for overcoming those. Finally, we'll have some time for Q&A at the end, but as mentioned, you can drop those in the chat as we go so you don't forget them. There'll also be some predictions and some insights from industry experts scattered throughout to break things up a bit. So before we get started, I'll give you a brief introduction to who we are and why we're in a position to be able to share these insights. So my name is Adam. I'm the head of partnerships at Gathered Here. I've worked with a range of not-for-profits, including Guide Dogs Victoria, Dialogue in the Dark, the APS, and Helping Hand Group. Lucy's here with me today and is our head of partner success. Lucy has about 20 years experience in various roles in the not-for-profit sector as well. Most recently, Lucy was at Kids Undercover as head of marketing and fundraising, and later head of their social enterprise, Nested. Our entire partnerships team has a strong NFP background because as a company, we feel it's really important that we understand firsthand the unique challenges that charities face. We believe it makes us better partners to you having this experience, and hopefully those of you who are already partners of ours would agree. So speaking of Gathered Here, I know some of you have a really good understanding of who we are and what we do already, but for those of you who don't, we're Australia's #1 end-of-life services website. We currently partner with over 150 different charities and NFPs to help them grow their bequest revenue through online wills, and we've had over $250 million pledged through our platform so far. We also have a proprietary platform which helps fundraisers gain meaningful insights into individual gifts, donor demographics, and campaign success. Thankfully, it's all paying off. We have over 1,500 five-star reviews of our will writing platform, and more than 99% of users recommend our service. Here's just a quick look at some of the charities we currently work with. As you can see, there are all shapes and sizes and styles of organization represented. We have some really big household names, as well as some smaller grassroots organizations as well. Everyone is welcome. Okay, last slide just before we jump into the nitty-gritty of things. This webinar is a synopsis of a report that our team recently completed, which looks at data from the UK, the US, and Australia. The report includes commentary from industry experts, including Ross Anderson. We'll jump a bit more into some of Ross's feedback a bit later today as well. The report was a really comprehensive study running through a whole range of in-depth stats and reports. We won't have time to run through the whole thing today, but if you haven't had a chance to download the report already, we would definitely encourage you to do so and take a closer look It's completely free to download and available now. The link is on the screen and will be there on the slides throughout the presentation, but you can also scan the QR code here, which will take you directly to the report page. I'll just give everyone a moment now so you can grab a screenshot of that QR code or scan it now if you'd like to grab that report. Right. So first up, we're going to take a look at some of the international and domestic trends around will writing and gift pledging. Until recently, online wills were relatively unsophisticated and had minimal links to charities and nonprofits. But that's all changed. Now we have highly sophisticated, technology-enabled platforms thriving as they work closely alongside the not-for-profit sector. If we look at this timeline, you can see this trend kicked off in the UK, and within a couple of years, the US got involved, then Australia followed suit. As you can see, there are some really huge milestones on there, and they came very quickly. Fairwill launched in the UK, and within 6 years, they'd helped people pledge £600 million to charities. That's about 1 billion Australian dollars. Over in the US, Freewill launched in 2017 and hit US $1 billion in just 3 years. With us, we haven't quite reached the $1 billion mark yet, but watch this space. We launched Online Wills in 2020, and we've already seen $250 million pledged to charities through our platform. Clearly, the appetite for online wills is growing. Let's look at the US again. Between 2017 and 2019, Freewill had around 50,000 new users. That's across the 2-year period. In 2020, they had 80,000 new users. So that's an increase of 30,000 more new users in half the amount of time. In 2021, they had almost doubled that increased figure to around 157,000 new users. The number of gifts being pledged also increased. In that 2-year period from 2017 to 2019, there were over 6,800 wills written that included at least one gift. In 2020, the number of new wills which included gifts surpassed 10,000. And in 2021, it hit almost 30,000. As you'd expect, the increase in the number of gifts also meant an increase to the value of those gifts. Again, the 2-year period saw about $540 million US pledged in gifts. 2020 saw that increase to around 800 million. And in 2021, they surpassed $1.5 billion US in gifts pledged. The same trend is happening here in Australia. Gathered here has seen a 132% increase in wills written year on year, and more than twice as many gifts has been pledged this year compared to last. In the first half of 2021, we saw close to $37 million pledged through our platform. In the first half of this year, well over $100 million was pledged. If that growth rate continues, there should be over $300 million in gifts pledged through Gathered here in the first half of next year. So you can see that we're on a really similar growth trajectory to those stats that we've seen overseas. Pretty clear that online wills and bequests are moving in the right direction, and a lot of that is due to the impact technology is having. We already know that online wills are making death planning more accessible to many, many more people. But beyond that, online wills are also positively impacting donor behavior. Our 2022 Gifts and Wills report found that 16% of wills written online included a gift. That's well over double the national average of 6.5%. The percentage of residual gifts is also much higher in online wills. Nationally, 48% of gifts were residual, but that number reached 78% when looking at wills written on Gathered here. But beyond online wills, fundraising technology is finally at a stage where it can have a real impact within the charity and not-for-profit space. It's allowing charities to capture and utilize data like never before. It's giving them better understanding of their donor base, and it's helping them create tailored and strategic bequest campaigns, which are going to drive some really impressive results. And in fact, we started seeing that already with a number of our partners. This is where the future of online wills and bequests comes into play. It's strategic, it's informed, and it's technology driven. We're going to take a look at our own platform here as an example of how technology is completely changing the gifts and wills space. One of the key things technology is enabling us to do is gaining access and insights to donor demographics that was previously impossible to record at any sort of impactful scale. Things like age, gender, location, family status, and even pet ownership that can all be figured out and tracked using technology platforms. This is useful for identifying broad demographics that might be more engaged and worth greater attention or advertising budget. For example, we found that Victorians were the most likely to include a gift in their will. Almost a quarter of all Victorian will writers pledged a gift, compared to 12% of South Australians, which is still nearly double the national average of 6.5%. In future, this means charities can use information about their own donor base to identify the best possible areas to run a campaign. Furthermore, these types of insights will allow NFPs to specifically tailor their messaging according to the historic donor behavior in any of these demographics that we're looking at here. But you can go even deeper than that. With donor consent, more specific information can be shared with charities, including their name, date of birth, email address, phone number, and mailing address, even a personal message about why they're pledging a gift. I don't need to tell you how invaluable this information is. It's a way of identifying donors that you may otherwise never have known about. It lets you know when existing donors do include a gift in their will, and it means that in future, charities have a head start in fostering really meaningful relationships with bequesters. And some of our charity partners are actually doing that already. Look at a few of those examples now. Recently, a will writer left a 10% residual gift to the Taronga Foundation. This individual wasn't even an existing supporter of Taronga. They wrote their will through the Gathered Here website, and Taronga was one of the featured charities. The will writer, after seeing the logo, remembered the organization, and she was compelled to leave a gift. She shared her details, and Taronga was able to reach out to her and say thank you. She sadly passed away shortly after that, and the gift is currently in the process of being realized by the Taronga Foundation. Obviously, the probate and will execution process can take a while, but so far there are no signs to suggest that her wishes won't be followed. Similarly, Sea Shepherd received a 1% gift from a will writer that came about because the donor had searched through the specific category listings displayed on our website. They saw Sea Shepherd listed under the environment category and chose to leave a gift. Again, she shared her information, and when Sea Shepherd contacted her, it turned out that she was actually a lapsed donor, and they were able to reconnect with a valued supporter. And finally, we also saw another charity connect with a will writer recently when a woman pledged a 5% residual gift to Bequests, as well as a 100% backup gift should her primary beneficiary pass away before her. Again, this individual was not a known supporter. She'd arrived through the Gathered Here website and searched the charity listings. Seeing the logo, she remembered some connection to the charity and felt compelled to pledge a gift. She shared her information with the Bequests team, and they were actually able to meet with her and start to foster and strengthen that relationship. Aside from helping nonprofits better understand and connect with donors, technology is also providing charities with information about gifts, such as the type of gift, its estimated value, and even information about specific gifts, such as property or shares. Technology also allows charities to see the impact and results of various marketing channels, such as EDMs, social media, or other forms of advertising. You can do this by tracking the total value of gifts pledged via a specific channel, the number of visitors, the number of will writers, the number of gifts, all information that can be used to help you identify areas that may need improvement or areas that are working phenomenally well. You can then apply your learnings across the board. This is something we've never been able to do before in gifts and wills, and it's only going to get better in time. In the future, gifts and wills professionals won't have to rely on guesswork. The data will be right there to guide your decisions. Similarly, specific campaigns can also be tracked. You might run a campaign for Include a Charity Week, or you might run a campaign during a specific awareness month. Again, those metrics I mentioned a second ago, you'll be able to track exactly how those campaigns performed, what worked well, and what might need some work. Looking forward, the impact technology is going to have on gifts and wills is enormous. These tools are going to be used to identify exactly what projects are working for you and which ones need tweaking. It's going to make it possible to forecast gifts and wills revenue, and it's going to make it so much easier for gifts and wills fundraisers to win buy-in from senior decision makers within your organization. Imagine being able to report in real time the impact of the work you're doing today with real and measurable data and analytics. That's what's possible currently with this technology. Next up, we're going to touch briefly on a few predictions from Ross Anderson, who has an incredibly rich history in the gifts and wills space. He's currently the gifts and wills manager for the Lost Dogs Home. He's the former chair and board member for Include a Charity. For anyone who hasn't already read our report, Ross was kind enough to participate in a lengthy Q&A with some really interesting thoughts in there, so it's definitely worth reading in full. To give you a bit of a taster, let's have a look at some of the snippets from that Q&A session. First up, charities are likely to embrace online wills. Ross predicts that the majority of charities are going to offer some sort of free or online will within the next 10 years. When you look at the UK, which as we touched on a little earlier, is a bit ahead of us in this journey, they're already there. Next, the potential impact is phenomenal. If all wills were written online, the amount of income charities would benefit from would be enormous. Now, we know that it's unlikely to happen anytime soon, or probably ever, but the more people we can get writing their wills online, the more revenue charities can expect. And that's going to be improved as online wills evolve over time. Ross believes, as do we, that it's only a matter of time before online wills are able to cater for a much wider range of people with more complex circumstances. As that happens, more people are going to be utilizing online wills and pledging gifts through online platforms. And finally, it's important to act now in order to protect future efforts. The longer charities delay and defer in taking these small steps forward, the bigger they're going to have to leapfrog in future, and they risk falling behind. Things are changing so quickly in this space. Charities and nonprofits need to be taking small steps forward now. Next, we're going to look at some of the drivers of bequest revenue and how they're likely to evolve in the future. In a report by Legacy Foresight, 5 key drivers were identified: deaf, child-free people, property prices, share prices, and charity marketing. Now, those factors aren't static, so we're going to have a look at the direction that they're moving in and the impact that they're having. Obviously, we can't talk about gifts and wills without talking about death. This year, there were just shy of 60,000 deaths before April 30th in Australia. That's 16.8% more than the historical average, and in real terms, 8,500 more deaths across 4 months. And it's not just the number of people dying that's going up, it's also the death rate. And that is the number of people dying per 1,000 people. In 2022, that was 6.7. The UN predicts that by 2050, that's going to reach 8.6. What does that mean in real terms? In 2018, around $100 billion was transferred from deceased estates. Around 2% of that, or $2 billion, went to charities. By 2050, it's expected that that's going to more than double. $224 billion is set to be passed from baby boomers in their wills. If giving rates were to stay the same, charities would be set to receive around $4.5 billion a year. However, it's very likely that given the rates will increase, that number will increase as well. So this is a fairly conservative estimate that we're looking at here. The next driver is child-free people. Our Gifts and Wills report proved what many of us knew already. People without children are far more likely to include a gift in their will. Single people with no children left a gift more than a fifth of the time, while married people with children only left a gift around 5% of the time. Not only that, but the gifts that they pledge are worth more. The average residual gift of a child-free will writer was 19.2%, and the average monetary gift was just shy of $20,000. In comparison, will writers with children had an average residual gift of 8.6%, and their average monetary gift was about $6,300. So, charities and fundraisers might be pleased to know that the percentage of Australians remaining child-free is on the rise. In 1976, 28% of Australian couples were childless. In 2016, that reached 38%. If the trend continues at its current pace, that percentage will reach 49% by 2050. Next up is property prices. On average, 51% of personal wealth in Australia is made up of property, either your own home or your investment properties. So if a supporter leaves a portion of their entire estate to charity, the overall value is going to be hugely influenced by property prices. Now, property prices are a bit more volatile than the death rate and child-free rate, but signs are good. Even with rate hikes and talks of a recession, when you look at the bigger picture, it is positive. In 2016, the median house price in Sydney was $782,000. Now, you'd struggle to get a decent apartment for that price in Sydney, and that was just 6 years ago. The median house price today is safely over $1 million. Using historical growth data, financial advice site Finder estimated what prices could be in 2050 if they carry on the same rate that we're seeing now. Now, I'm sure we'd have plenty of other problems if house prices do reach this level, but at least charities would be earning some great income in terms of the value of properties from bequests. In the same vein, share prices, which also have a huge impact, are quite volatile. Many people do choose to leave shares to charities as a form of bequest. If we look back 10 years ago, the entire ASX market cap was $1.22 trillion. This year, that's more than doubled to $2.45 trillion. This is particularly important because not only are the overall value of shares going up, but so is the percentage of Australians trading. In 2014, 36% of Australians owned shares outside of their superannuation. But by 2020, that had reached 46%, and it's estimated to be at 49% this year. It means that many more Australians own shares, which means that many more can pledge them in their wills compared to a decade ago. And finally, the last driver of bequest is charity marketing. Now, this is really the only driver which we have any sort of influence or control over, but really shouldn't be underestimated in terms of how important this can be. Charities can play a huge role in increasing awareness of legacy giving among the general public and also encouraging their supporters to pledge a gift. Even relatively simple, low-cost initiatives can have a huge impact. We compared 1-part and 2-part EDM series promoting online wills and found that a 2-part EDM series delivered over 1 week increased the number of bequests by 110% compared to a standalone EDM. So even these small steps that we can take now are having a huge impact. People who received a charity marketing campaign about gifts and wills were also almost twice as likely to pledge a gift compared to those who hadn't. I'll now hand over to Lucy, who's going to provide us with some additional insights.
Thank you, Adam, and hello, everybody. I hope you're enjoying the session so far. So during the development of the Future of Online Will and Bequest report, I was asked to offer some insights into charity marketing. So I'll be talking about that, as well as the motives and barriers to writing wills, and also sharing some legal insights from our head of legal, Michael Clohesy. But before I start, just reminding you that there's much more comprehensive information in the report itself about everything I'll be covering today, including all of the research report references. Many people know they should have a will, but are deterred by the misconception that it's a difficult, expensive, and time-consuming process. However, digital innovations in the bequest space, including online will platforms, are making the will writing process more accessible and affordable than ever before. Estate planning is now possible for anyone who has access to the internet. People can even write their will on their mobile phone whilst they're watching the TV. That's how far we've come in recent years. As more and more people become aware that they can write their will online, it is actually really easy to imagine a future where writing a will is just another life admin task for people, like registering a car or just doing a tax return that we're all used to doing every year. And when that happens, that will be transformational for charities. Charities are used to work with online will providers to spread the word about the ease and affordability of online wills to their supporters, who will then hopefully talk to their friends and family and so on to spread the word. Bringing attention to online will writing will help normalise end-of-life planning in society, and that in turn will increase legacy giving to charities. We will see more people writing wills, and as a result, more people to the causes that they care about. I think we can all agree that asking a person to plan for their death needs to be handled carefully and sensitively, whether it's a face-to-face conversation with a donor or developing content for a gift in will campaign. In my experience, charity supporters are overwhelmingly receptive to pledging a gift in their will, even those supporters that you wouldn't necessarily or traditionally target with a gift in will ask. If you're offering a free will or a discounted will to your supporters as part of your gift and will strategy, they are likely to be even more receptive because they are being given something that they value for free, and the pledge that they're making is costing them absolutely nothing, yet they know in the future that a potentially transformational gift is coming to the cause that they care about. This is incredibly powerful for supporters, and will likely increase their levels of engagement with the charity throughout their lifetime. Finally, it's quite common for charities and nonprofits to have reservations about running multiple bequest campaigns throughout the year, or promoting bequest campaigns widely to all of their supporters, just out of fear that it will compete with campaigns that are driving immediate revenue. Whilst I absolutely understand these concerns, I don't think that they are mutually exclusive. As I just said, a bequest doesn't cost a donor anything, so they don't feel any financial pinch at all, especially when they've been given access to a free will during the process. Immediate revenue is obviously critical for not-for-profits and can't be underestimated. But echoing Ross's comments from earlier, the only way to get ahead of that cycle is for not-for-profits to create a strong pipeline for the future now. Now, let's look at what the barriers might be to future bequest revenue and what charities can do to help change societal attitudes towards end-of-life planning. Our research shows that these barriers fall into three categories: writing, pledging, and contesting. Let's look at writing first. So there are countless studies that try to pinpoint exactly why people don't write a will. These are just a few of them, but again, they're all referenced in the report. What's interesting is that across every report, the number one reason why people didn't have a will was the same: procrastination. They just hadn't got around to it. They put it off and they think, oh, I'll do it later, even though they know it's important, and then it just never gets done. I know I have many conversations with people every day who are in that boat, and I certainly was before I started working at Gather Here. After that, the most common reason was people not thinking it was worth the money or effort it would take to write one, often because they felt that they just didn't have enough assets to justify the expense. But the good news here is that these findings make it really clear what pain points the not-for-profit sector faces and should be focusing on to encourage more Australians to write a will. So messaging should be around the ease of writing a will. Acknowledge that people have probably put this off before. That's okay. Reassure them that it's likely to be much quicker and easier than they imagine. Next, offering a free or low-cost way to write a will makes end-of-life planning more accessible and encourages more people to participate. This is all crucial to getting end-of-life planning to the point where we mentioned before, where it's just another life admin task. We don't want anyone to think that writing a will isn't for them. It's for everyone, and everyone can now access it. Finally, messaging around the financial risks of dying without a will aren't as effective as some might think. Instead, messaging should be around the benefits to loved ones in terms of making sure they're provided for and that they don't have the stress of figuring out your final wishes during an already traumatic time in their lives. The next category was pledging. There's a really interesting report called Motives and Barriers to Bequest Giving, which explores the reasons why Australians might or might not pledge a gift to a charity. It found that Australia is a nation distinguished by very high lifetime giving, but low estate planning. It also found that individuals who believe in the efficacy of a charity are more likely to pledge a gift. It found that, unsurprisingly, people who think it's difficult to make a charitable bequest are less likely to leave a charitable bequest. And interestingly, it found no evidence that people with fewer assets and financial resources were less likely to leave a charitable bequest. This was contrary to the author's initial hypothesis. So for recommendations, messaging really needs to be around the ease of pledging a gift to charity. It's quick, it's easy, it's not going to cost you anything, and you're not going to get stuck doing it for hours. Charities should also communicate the real-life impact that a donation could have in the future. Show supporters in real times what they could be paying for and what has been achieved so far, so they trust that you're going to spend their life savings or what's left of them wisely. Finally, charities should look to normalise legacy giving. We know Australians are generous, but we need to make sure that generosity is coming through in end-of-life planning as well. And the final category is contesting. Unfortunately, as you would know, just because a supporter pledges a gift in their will, it doesn't necessarily mean that gift will eventuate. It could be contested, most often by adult children or partners. Again, there's a really interesting study on this, which goes into it in a bit more detail, but here are some recommendations for reducing will contests. It suggests that frequently updating a will is a good way of lowering the chances of contestation. Will writers should be encouraged to make changes upon major life events such as births, deaths, but also big sales or purchases such as property or vehicles. Online wills can help by allowing for frequent low-cost or free updates. Rather than visiting a solicitor over and over again, it's just a 5-minute job on the laptop. The report also recommended wider will writing and called for greater encouragement of will writing across all ages and demographics. Again, it proposed that will writing should become just another piece of life admin for all. This loops back to what I was saying earlier about not being afraid to cast the net wide with a gift in will ask, no matter how old they are or how much they own, especially when there is a free online will being offered. Getting people to start writing wills from a young age will help normalise estate planning and in turn increase legacy giving in the future. On that note, I'm going to touch very quickly on some insights from our very own Michael Clohesy, who heads up our legal team of 6 probate lawyers and has been practising wills and estate law for close to 20 years. Again, his full article can be found in the report, but here are a few of his comments. So online wills are becoming mainstream. The Victorian government-owned state trustees recently began offering online wills for $50, which is a clear sign that the wider legal community are starting to embrace this new technology. Australians are also embracing legacy giving, and online wills are helping. Sadly, as many of you already probably know, the legacy directive isn't as prevalent in traditional wills. Estate planning lawyers don't always invite clients to include a charity in their will. Thankfully, this isn't the case with online will platforms, with most directly asking will writers if they will consider leaving a gift to a cause they care about or causes they care about. Importantly, though, online wills are not a substitute for professional advice. There is always going to be a need for professional advice for those who have more complicated estates and situations. Online wills are vital in getting more Australians to prepare a will. There are many people out there who won't ever have a will if they don't have access to a simple, quick, convenient, and affordable way to write one, such as online. Finally, quick and simple estate planning will be the preference for many Australians. We are used to fast on-the-go services like this, and it's finally arrived in the end of life industry. While online wills won't be right for everyone, they do have a very important role to play and will be a great solution for many. With that, I just want to say again, another huge thank you on behalf of Adam and I for coming along today. We hope you found it interesting and you can use some of the insights in your everyday work as well. There's the QR code again there if you want to quickly get a shot of that and access the report. Yeah, I think back to you, Claire.
Great. Thanks, Lucy. Thanks so much, Adam. Okay, we've got quite a few questions in there. And thank you very much to Nicola, who has been in the back end here with us answering those questions. But we might go through a few of them anyway, just to make sure that we've covered all the bases. There was one that came in that was about the growth of online wills and whether you thought that COVID had a big impact on that as well, because people couldn't get to lawyers or couldn't, access things in the way they usually do, and whether ongoing that will be, something to consider about the growth of online wills.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really key point in terms of what we're seeing. And I think that's spot on. There has been an increase to online wills through COVID, some of that out of necessity. I need to write my will, depending on where you were during COVID and when that might have been. Here in Melbourne, it was illegal to take out the bins for a while. So, it might have been purely out of necessity that turning to an online solution was the best choice. But I think more broadly and probably more long term, I think one of the quite interesting impacts of COVID is just the people adopting more online solutions that otherwise may have never been forced into doing so. Even things like our webinar today, these are much more common now after COVID than they were pre-COVID. So a lot of people moved to doing their banking online that previously preferred to go into the branch and speak to a teller and take care of things. So I just think a lot of that life admin has moved online, and there are a huge number of people who otherwise would have been kind of against some of the more modern solutions to some of these more life admin tasks that have embraced it a bit more. So kind of twofold there. There's the immediate piece of it out of necessity, but then the long-term sort of shift in views towards technology.
Yeah, I think even the older demographics are using online technology now and feeling much more comfortable with the security of it. So that
absolutely
is an impact on it. And also probably just the fragility of life for younger generations, and what has happened has made them reconsider their kind of invincibility, I guess, maybe. So that could impact too as well. I was interested in that stat, Adam, that you had, that online wills in Victoria, 24%. Do you have any insight into why that was?
Just all really lovely people. No,
no. Yeah.
I don't have that background data in front of me. We could certainly look back at some of the information that we have there. I know Nicola and the team here did a huge amount of work into putting together that gifts and wills report. So that's not the report that's available from the QR code here from today's webinar, but from our last presentation, the 2020 Gifts and Wills report, there's much more in-depth breakdown of a lot of those different demographics there. So there's probably a little bit more in terms of why, but a lot of it's just going to come down to individuals and how they choose to write their wills and leave gifts.
Okay. A couple of people have asked, Adam, what is the point of difference between Gathered Here and other online will options?
Yeah, look, we don't want to make it into a huge sales pitch, so I won't ramble on too much, but I think there's a couple of really key things. One that I touched on before, but really just the fact that our partnerships team does come from the not-for-profit sector. I think it's really important that we've been in your shoes in many cases, and we understand some of the challenges that can come along with that. We also understand that, gifts and wills, how that fits into the broader fundraising program is usually quite different. It's more of a very long-term fundraising strategy. We understand and appreciate that and hope that everything we're doing really reflects our understanding of that. We want to work with people with that scope of that very long-term strategy in mind. The second thing, though, and maybe more important, the fact that our wills are free.
Yeah.
It really, Lucy touched on so many of the points there in terms of overcoming some of these barriers around bequest giving, and particularly what that means in the future as more people start writing their wills. The ability to offer your supporters a free online will really just helps you to have those conversations in a very different manner. You can start approaching much wider groups of your donor base and your supporters, even your volunteers, staff, all sorts of different people, and approach it from the angle of you can write a free will, as opposed to starting directly with that ask for a bequest, which, as we know, can be quite difficult to do. So touching on some of those barriers that we mentioned here, really just highlighting the ease, the fact that there's no cost involved, and just opening that up to as many people as possible makes a huge difference.
Okay, great. Thanks, Adam. Warren asked, and I think this has been reflected in a few questions as well, about, well, obviously it is a great platform if your will is fairly straightforward, but what about more complex financial circumstances such as family trusts, farming properties, that kind of thing? Is there going to be family businesses? Will you be able to handle these at some point in the future?
Oh, look, as far as what's in the future, only time will tell. We certainly hope that we're able to accommodate that. And look, it's a really fair point, and I always say we would never ask to be positioned as or claim to be the best solution for everyone out there. We fully acknowledge, and as Lucy touched on from Michael's feedback, online wills are not going to be right for everyone now. That may change in the future as technology continues to evolve. For us, we like to think about it as more of, is it someone writing an online will or not having a will at all, as opposed to, is it an online will or a will with a solicitor? Now, there's going to be a small cohort of people who do fall in that in between there, where maybe they could write a simple online will, or maybe they do need to go sit down with a solicitor. But we believe that there is always a place for that professional advice, always a place for those solicitor drafted wills. There are some things that you simply can't do without sitting down and having that one-on-one consultation. So you touched on a few of them there in terms of what's limited at the moment. And even in our own platform, we do offer we call it a bespoke will, but that's a solicitor drafted will. So we present that option to people if they do need that. That is at a fee. Those ones aren't free, unfortunately, but we fully appreciate that not everyone is going to be able to kind of write a simple online will.
Yeah, great. Amanda asks, if someone is filling out an online will from Gathered Here and they get to the part where they could include a gift in their will to a charity, does the charity have to be listed on your platform, or can they choose a charity that you that's not listed?
Yeah, great question. So we will never limit someone's ability to support any organization that they would like to support. So on our platform, we do have listed the charities that we work with. They are more prominent, but there will always be a button there that is a manual add charity button. Individuals can click that. They can type in the details of any organization that they would like to leave a gift to. So no, we will absolutely not stand in the way of anyone supporting any cause that they're passionate about.
Okay, thanks, Adam. I think that Nicola is typing the answer to this question to Bev, the average age of a will maker.
Might let Nicola answer that one if she has it in front of her. I believe it's around 45, but Nicola will have the stats more readily available than I do.
Great. Ingrid asks, what does executed accurately mean, and how do you close the gap between a whole bunch of online users and wills that have been written but not executed correctly, and they're ineffective or open to be contested?
Yeah, really good question. So look, in terms of being executed properly, that's being signed, witnessed, and signed by those witnesses. So our platform has some really simple steps to sort of guide people through that. Once they complete the process of actually filling in their will, they then need to download it, print that out, and go through that execution process. Now, that question around that kind of gap between is a really, really important one. And I think that's really one of the pieces that we've kind of touched on, that technology is going to improve that. Currently, there is no direct feedback loop there in terms of actually having that executed document come back to Gathered Here. Now, there's a few sort of interesting, creative, and exciting solutions that we're looking at in that space, and I think in the not too distant future that will change. Some of the challenge in terms of what we can do there, some of it is limited by legislation, some of it is limited by technology, some of it is really just around appreciating our relationship with the will writer and the steps that we're asking them to go through in terms of printing, signing, scanning, uploading a document back to us, and what the value is there for an individual. So there's a number of different variables at play here that we're really working to navigate through and come up with the best solution for all of the parties involved in that process. But I think the important thing within that is just making it really straightforward for people in the Wills platform itself in terms of what they need to do to finish that document. And we really walk people through that process step by step so that they can get it done easily.
Okay, brilliant. Jessica asked that some people may want to gift items or objects which they may not be able to accept, artworks, jewelry that hasn't been valued. How does Gathered Here handle that?
Fortunately, we don't see too many specific item gifts being left to organizations. Now, they do come through. The platform does allow individuals to do that. It tends to be more specific items being left to family members and loved ones. Unfortunately, there's no direct way we can really limit someone's ability to do that. A lot of that we feel is more impactful and probably more appropriate coming from the charity themselves. So in whatever campaign, through whatever channel you might choose to share a link with your supporters around the opportunity to write a free online will, you can talk about some of those specifics in terms of what you can and cannot accept and what types of gifts are going to be most impactful.
So they can just communicate that on your platform via a link to what they're...
So it would be through, for example, if they decide to send an EDM around Include a Charity Week, in that email, they might talk about the types of gifts they can and can't accept, and then share that link to the Gathered Here, their co-branded version of our platform. But really having that message come from the charity rather than through Gathered Here. The difficulty is we could work with you around some specific messaging for your dedicated page with us. The challenge, as I mentioned before, we will never limit someone's ability to leave a gift to any organization that they choose to do. So we could work with you really closely to understand exactly what types of gifts you would like to see through your dedicated page. Someone could come through the generic Gathered Here page, manually enter in your details and leave you whatever type of gift they might choose to leave you. So.
Okay, great. Maria asks, I would love to go through the steps of writing a will through your platform so that I can see it firsthand. Could you do a test run with her?
Would love to.
Get in touch, Maria.
Please send me an email. Would love to find some time to run through that with you and show you all the ins and outs.
Okay, lovely. Catherine asks, how many of your clients, including a gift to charity, give approval to forward their details onto the charity for stewardship?
Yeah, great question. It does vary quite a bit based on a few different points. One of the more broad ones being the type of organization. So for example, we tend to see much higher rates of individuals sharing their details when we're talking about organizations who work in climate advocacy, wildlife conservation, that type of thing, as opposed to mental health, for example. Mental health organizations have very low rates of people sharing their details. I think some of that just comes back to some of the stigma around mental health. We also see a much higher rate of individuals sharing their details when they do come through one of the charity co-branded pages. So when they're actually writing their will off the back of receiving an email or some form of communication from the charity, significant increase there. I think it's about 50% if we look at everything across the board, but there's certain things that we can do to kind of work with you to increase those numbers as well.
Okay. Sharon asked, do you have any stats around unopened rates and unsubscribed rates from EDM campaigns, please?
I don't. Lucy might have some of that. Lucy looks after more of our campaign side of things with our partner, so might defer to you for that one, Lucy.
It's probably a good time to ask that question, given we're sort of at the tail end of Include a Charity Week. And a lot of, the reminder emails are going out this week. So anecdotally, from the charity side, in terms of open rates, and I always encourage charities to say in the subject heading, write, get your free will, or write your free will today. So that will increase, that will get attention, and lead to higher open rates. So they are getting higher open rates than they possibly would from other campaigns. And then in terms of unsubscribes, it's about the same as what they would from say they were sending a newsletter out. It's no more or no less. But I do recommend that charities consider with their unsubscribes actually having options to unsubscribe, so that if they hit unsubscribe, it's not unsubscribing from everything. It might just be, they just don't want to hear about gifts and wills in the future, so that you're not going to be losing them from all other communications as well.
Got it. Okay. There's been a few questions about the marketing support. Lucy, Tiara asked, Nicola has answered, but it does seem clear from Nicola's answers that you provide help for the EDMs and social campaigns, you have toolkits, etc. So maybe just tell everyone in the room that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, sorry, you go, Adam.
I was going to say, so we have 2 tiers available in terms of how organizations can choose to work with us. We have our basic tier, which is completely free. On that tier, it's some pretty basic support that you get from us, but you do still get some templates and resources from our team to assist. And then we have our premium tier, which does come at a fee to the organization. On the premium tier, though, you're going to get much more bespoke support from Lucy and her team, run through an actual success plan, discuss some of the different channels and campaigns that you might choose to run, set up some of the tracking links and run through all of the different bells and whistles there, and then much more in-depth and sort of bespoke collateral and resources there. So we can be as involved or as hands-off as you would like us to be, really. But part of that does kind of depend on the tier that you're working with us on as well.
Okay. Ingrid had asked about legality and enforceability of online wills. Maybe just explain that a little bit. Nicola has answered, but maybe just in case people haven't seen that in the Q&A.
Yeah, great. So probably getting into the space where I just need to remind everyone that we're not solicitors and can't give any legal advice. Michael always likes to make sure that we preface these discussions with that one. He's our head of legal. In terms of the legality of online wills, they are no more or less legal than any will that you could go buy from the post office or go right with a solicitor. So in terms of the requirements for what makes a will, online wills will meet all of those requirements. In terms of I guess kind of the robustness of wills, again, it really kind of comes down to the individual and partially them understanding if they can use a simple online will or if they need that more bespoke option. But certainly in terms of the wills being legal and being upheld in court, an online will is no different to any other will that's available to individuals.
Okay, excellent. Bev's question about the average age was answered by Nicola. Thank you. It's 45, as you said. And the 41% of Gathered His will writers are aged between 45 and 64. We even have 3 will writers over the age of 100. That's pretty incredible, isn't it? So, yeah, there have been some questions about costs here. But I think unless you want to expand on that more, it's pretty much Nicola has covered it in there. There's questions about sustainability of the service, etc. if the wills are free, but obviously there is a model for that, and I don't know whether you want to explain that.
One thing I will just touch on really quickly there, I think it's important that a lot of people probably would have heard this already who are familiar with us, but one really important thing to understand about Gathered here is we are not an online wills company. We're an online wills company offering free wills and a free tier for you to work with us. We probably wouldn't be in business for too long, so that's a fair question. We are an online end-of-life services company, so there are a number of other products and services that we provide outside of the wills platform itself. You cast back to the timeline that we looked at, we launched our wills platform September 2020, but Gathered here has actually been around since sort of end of 2016, beginning of 2017. So in terms of kind of the robustness of the company and from a commercial standpoint, will we be around? Absolutely, we're not planning on going anywhere. So it is a fair question. For us, the wills platform is really about getting as many people to write wills as possible. And the easiest way to get people to do something is to offer it to them for free. So that's really the problem that we set out to solve. It wasn't how can we make money from wills online, it was how can we get as many people to write their wills as possible.
Brilliant. Anne asks, how do you assess someone's capacity to make a will and therefore the validity of the document?
Great question, and I wish I had a great answer for you. Unfortunately, if you're not writing a will directly in front of a solicitor, and sometimes even then, there isn't currently a great way to check capacity. Now, we do have notes on our platform around that and asking people to confirm that they are of sound mind. But it is a really tricky one. Unfortunately, I'm sure we've all heard stories of people taking advantage of someone who is not of sound mind, even in person, sitting down with a solicitor and drafting that will. So again, this is one of the things that we hope we'll be able to build out a little bit more as technology continues to grow. There's some interesting options out there. A lot of it, again, just comes down to how easy and effective some of these solutions are. But capacity is always going to be a really challenging one when we're talking about any wills online, offline, with a solicitor, drafted at home, whatever it may be.
Okay, great. Bev asked, does the charity branding stay on your site even after campaign has finished?
Yes, I hesitate there. There's a few different ways that sort of works. So all of the organizations that we work with have their own dedicated landing page as well. So whether you're working with us on our basic tier or our premium tier, you will have your own unique page there. That branding doesn't go away. It's there all year round. And then sitting on our sites, there's a few different areas where you can sit on the organic gathered here page. It's not necessarily campaign specific. So broadly, yes, but there's a few different bits and pieces to chat through there in terms of where you might sit and what that might look like. But the branding's always there.
Beautiful. Lisa asked about executors and Colin answered, thank you, Colin, out back there, that you could have up to 3 executors designated and 3 backup executors, in case you missed that in the chat. And then I think we may have come to the end here, and I think we got through all those questions. So hopefully none of them were missed. And thank you, Nicola, so much for answering those, because otherwise we wouldn't have got through them all. Thanks, Colin, as well. A big thank you to Adam and Lucy for the presentation. It's very informative. I hope you get a lot of interesting insight out of that report that they have put together. And thank you so much for joining us, all our registrants. You'll be getting the link and the recording very soon. And so it's goodbye from F&P, goodbye from Gathered Here. See you all.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Thank you.